Good afternoon. My name is Joanne Rolle. I'm the Dean of the School of Business here at Medgar Evers College, City University of New York. And it's my pleasure this afternoon to present to you the work that we have been doing in both entrepreneurship and the School of Business in the Experiential Learning Lab. We are going to be talking to you a little more abstract today about the future of work in entrepreneurship for the underserved. That's the title of the presentation. Globally, there continues to be concern about the widening income gap, and for good cause. The World Inequality Report 2018 just recently came out with a lot of fascinating work using the tool that they've developed and the database that they've developed so that we could look at wealth and income disparities globally. The good news is that the global wealth creation gains have been made. The not so good news is that the top 1% garnered a significant share of the growth, while the bottom 50% continues to be stagnant, causing many of the bottom 50% to be subsisting on long-term, constant low levels of poverty. December 2018, at the OAS and UN consultation, it was apparent that racism and poverty continues to plague worldwide economies, causing massive underutilization of diverse talent as well as social unrest, leading to predictions of economic instability of consumer markets. As low-level labor functions are substituted for higher-level artificial intelligence and other aligned technologies, the ensuing issue becomes the rate of learning of the displaced labor market and its ability to transition to alternative industry needs. Many are preparing for massive global underemployment as we are beginning to see the decrease in demand for undergraduates, graduates, and other skilled talent seeking employment opportunities. We are facing an ever-increasing demand for academic credentials at increasing costs, with the possibility of lower real yield of economic opportunity. So how do we prepare diverse talent to prepare for a dynamic and possibly uncaring world of continuous automation and changing needs of the marketplace? There are many authors, including myself, that posit the focus of entrepreneurship in underserved economies will yield rates of higher creativity, innovation, employment, and economic growth. This paper will address the question of future of work and entrepreneurship in the following sections. Section 1 will be on global wealth and income disparities. Section 2 is on exploring options for increasing the utilization of global diverse talent. Hope for the future of technology and entrepreneurial innovations for the underserved, and unity in community and capacity building, which we really think is the hope, and a few conclusions. So first of all, we're going to talk about the new tools that we have to measure global wealth and income disparities. You will see as the work progresses, the World Inequality Report in 2018 is available on the web. You can go to it yourself. The most interesting finding as it relates to the future of work for the underserved are the following. The first top 1% earners gain increase in wealth were twice as much as the bottom 50%. Moderate income gains were also made by the bottom 50%. But this is the key finding. The middle class is completely squeezed by increases of the top 1%. And the top 1% earnings contains all of the poorest 90% income groups in the European Union as well as the United States. And we'll talk more in the report about the United States and how it impacts us in what I'm calling the protected classes. And there are a few other key findings. You can go to the report, but I'm going to give you the highlights. The top 10% national income share across the world. In Europe, the top 10% earn 37% of the income. China, 41%. Russia, 46%. The US and Canada, 47%. So you see the top 10% are approaching up to 50% of the income in those developed countries. Now, a few not so developed areas, sub-Saharan Africa, it's 54%. It gets worse. Brazil, 55%. And where you are today in India, it's 55%. And in the Middle East, it's 61%. So you see this is a global challenge and not just a one area or one region challenge. So we're going to talk a little bit more now about exploring options for increasing the use of global diverse talent. When the statistics are reviewed, it is truly disturbing to see the significant rises of wealth gains by the global top 1% and the stagnation of the bottom 50%. While the World Inequality Report acknowledges that the income gap fuels global poverty levels, it falls short with substantive recommendations and proposals for change. The report cites progressive taxation strategies, education reforms, and public investments, all tried before and all continue to fail the poor and the underserved. As the report notes, there is significantly less public capital accessible and available to invest, and private capital continues to be diverted to the private, not social good. The report alludes to, but not discuss, the growing plight of the educated poor, those youth who are first and second generation graduates with limited employment options, experiencing lower standards of living, even lower than their middle class parents. What the report also fails to explore is the creation of increased wealth was generated by a series of innovations, disruptions, and transformations of multiple industries, yielding massive worldwide changes in technology, productivity, and consumption. There were several industries that completely declined here in the U.S., like the textile and some other industries, and new industries evolved, and some industries completely recreated themselves. With dynamic, evolving global change, many individual and corporate innovators capitalize on the new wealth creation, which is expected. The challenge is that so few received so much and so many received so little. What is further disturbing is that if we continue in the U.S., the prediction from this report is that it will get worse here in the U.S. rather than better. The report also failed to factor in labor market dysfunctions such as discrimination, which limit employment accessibility to those in the protected class. And here in the U.S., the protected class is race, gender, age, disability, and veterans. So even if employment levels were to increase, significant portions of the population would continue to be underserved. What is also perplexing for many graduates in and out of the protected classes is the requirements for these new and dynamic industries are demanding a diverse set of skills, many of which are not acquired through the formal education process. A common industry critique of the current education system is that time in grade is not a direct measure of learning capability or performance. In January 2018, an article came out, The Future of Work and Global Talent. What about the poor? There are several approaches and recommendations that made, and it was all encompassing, and I truly believe it's a good direction for us to go. I'm not going to read all of that. You can Google it and go to it for yourself, but I want you to know that people are thinking that the direction globally we're going is not going to resolve many issues with the poor, and which is more disturbing is there are going to be more of us considered poor. Okay, the hope for the future. So this is not all disdain. I want you to realize there is hope for the future, and I believe it's in technology and entrepreneurial innovations for the underserved. There is hope for an economy of diversity and inclusion of a broad base of talent using technology such as artificial intelligence, the cloud computing, 3D printing, virtual reality, and later, I really believe augmented reality is going to have a place in this discussion. Instead of cloning homogeneous labor forces to support the demands of mass production, more diverse, creative, and agile entrepreneurial teams or persons will cost effectively produce for niche markets, even as small as units of one. What makes this concept in this new book called The Unscaled, How AI and a New Generation of Upstarts Are Creating the Economy of the Future hold exciting possibilities for the underserved is because it means with much less capital in terms of the scaled economies, you are going to be able to create entrepreneurial opportunity with smaller amounts of private capital. And in the report talks about how the transition of public capital has gone to the private marketplace, and most of the capital for innovation is in the private marketplace, is going to be important in terms of eliminating the risk that is involved in transferring that capital to smaller amounts. So I really believe this is going to be a transformation for those in the underserved population, because they will need less capital to start their entrepreneurial ventures. The vision in the book is that the new world has good and bad news. In an interview, the author talks about a future where technology will increase, and this is an example, the lifespan of a truck driver, but the truck driver may not have a job because technology will have developed self-driving vehicles. Later, the book cites multiple Silicon Valley experiments with universal income because the demand for labor globally is expected to significantly decline. While income can be shifted such that the displaced labor is compensated financially, no one really knows yet the impact of a lifetime of not working on an individual or society's sense of purpose. I'm going to continue now and talk a little about, not so much about the educational system, because the author also believes that the educational system will have to, by definition, change to meet the needs of the industry. But where I want to go now is talk a little bit about unity and community and capacity building. And I know I'm running short of time, so I will try to be brief here. The Inter-American Commission on Human Rights and the United Nations Office of the High Commission on Human Rights met last year in December, and I was privileged to be a part of that meeting. And after a day-long meeting with delegates from all over the world telling us about the issues of human rights and poverty, I was struck that we have gone so far and so little has been done. And at the end, they agreed that many of the tools that we've used in the past to abate poverty have not been working. And the approach needs to go from the top down, the UN and the OAS telling member countries, this is what you must do to help the poor. The agreement was at the end of that day-long conference that grassroots, bottom-up community building and capacity building, not so much from the government and policy makers, but from the poor and the folks who work directly with the poor, who hear their voices and know their pains. So in my assessment, that was the major outcome of the consultation that they had. And they also reported, and you can find some of their reports online and available on the Poverty and Human Rights Report in 2017. So you can look it up, and that gives in detail the areas where they think should be focused. And in conclusions, I'm going to come to my conclusions now because I know I'm over, but I hope you will bear with me just a few more minutes. We now have reliable data. So long there wasn't data to assess what was going on in countries in terms of income and wealth disparity. We now have consistent data to compare both developed and developing countries, and we don't have to rely on their self-reporting, which has not been reliable in the past. So now that we have the data, we can develop more and more strategies to impact poverty on the poor. I continue to believe that strategies to increase the rate of entrepreneurship development within communities of the underserved will outpace other strategies for substantive economic change. As advanced technologies begins to shape a brave new world, there will be a decreasing demand for low-level functions and an increasing demand for higher-level labor functions. Is the worldwide labor force capable to transition at the rate of low-level to higher-level labor substitutions required by industry? Will those who are unable or unwilling to find lower-level function employment suffer a lifetime of poverty? If in fact the top 1% of global earners determine there is no longer a need or desire for the bottom 50%, what are lifestyle scenarios that the poor will be forced to succumb to? What if we take the UN OAS approach to develop partnerships in economic collaboration and capacity building? What if we allocate resources to build grassroots ecosystems to launch, leverage, and grow sustainable technology ventures in underserved communities? What if private capital strategies such as opportunity zones redirect private capital into impact enterprises? What if the poor help develop their own ventures in their own communities with their own human capital? What if? It starts with us. It starts with our voices. Thank you.